Hello, welcome to Headlines. With the future of the US government's main overseas aid agency cast into doubt, the questions have been asked as to how this will bear upon Ukraine, the top recipient of American foreign assistance. On day one of his presidency, Donald Trump ordered a 90-day suspension of US foreign aid-funded projects worldwide to establish if they aligned with American interests and American values. The agencies affected include the National Endowment for Democracy, the Food for Peace Emergency Program, and also, most importantly, the US Agency for International Development, known as USAID. The latter has been one of the key linchpins of the American influence abroad, and now it's facing the prospect of overhaul and incorporation into the State Department. Elon Musk, head of the Department of Government Efficiency, described the entity as a ball of worms and beyond repair. The critics of USAID accuse the agency and its leadership of inherent inefficiency and corruption, with the 19th administrator of USAID, Samantha Power, being subjected to heavy criticism too. But this organization has played a very important role for Ukraine. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, USAID has provided the country with $2.6 billion in humanitarian aid and $5 billion in development assistance, and also more than $30 billion in direct budget support. Some reports suggest that the sense of panic has gripped Ukraine's humanitarian sector, as an abrupt 90-day freeze on US development funding has had dire consequences for many organizations, including the very principal life-saving ones. I'm now joined by Olena Halushka, head of the board at the International Center for Ukrainian Victory, joining us from Kiev, Ukraine. Mrs. Halushka, thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
How concerned are you and those around you about the implications of this 90-day freeze and the prospects of the permanent closure of USAID, which in the best case scenario is likely to be merged into the State Department?
Well, I have to say that, of course, American aid has been instrumental for Ukraine, and not only for Ukraine, for the transitional democracies, for the human rights protection. And we are closely following the developments that are happening inside the United States as the new administration is delivering on the reforms. But we have to take a look at this picture more broader, because for us, since the very start of the full-scale war, the aid that we have been receiving from American partners, from the European partners, has been vital for our survival as the state and our efficient self-defense from the Russian illegal war of aggression. But we understood from the very beginning that this is not a sustainable solution, and it would be very complicated to maintain the same level of overall assistance. And here, I mean not only humanitarian assistance or development, but military assistance, funds necessary for our macro-financial stability, for our reconstruction. So my organization from the very start has prioritized the campaign Make Russia Pay in order to push for the confiscation of the Russian assets that were frozen in the G7 countries in the very first days of the full-scale war. For us, that has been a top priority, specifically because it's about win-win-win for everybody. It's about America first, and that's what President Zelensky said in his interview with Lex Friedman, podcaster, that he offered President Trump to confiscate this money and use them to procure American weapons for Ukraine. So Ukraine will be provided with the necessary aid. American industries will be developed. America First principle, which President Trump is promoting, and peace through strength will be implemented. And, Ukraine aid will be secured from any political or domestic turbulence in our key member states, because right now we are very closely following the developments, let's say in Germany, in France, in all of the European countries, and we need to secure the sustainable funding for Ukraine, which will be absolutely free from any political influences. And we think that at this point, this should continue to be our main priority, because various countries may apply different domestic policies, but the support and assistance for Ukraine in this in this largest war of aggression since World War II will definitely have the implications globally, not only on Europe, not only on the Eastern Europe or Caucasus region, but definitely globally.
Well, thank you very much indeed. In terms of the importance attached to USAID, I would like to reflect on the following comment, which I read this morning. I think it was made by Ukrainian photographer Vladislav Sodel. He said that in terms of the USAID's work in Ukraine for the past 8 years, people can't even imagine how deeply all the funds provided by USAID have become woven into Ukrainians' life to the point where they do not even suspect it. Now we understand that the support provided by that agency cannot be viewed as part of their sustainable development and long-term plan ensuring the stable future for Ukraine. So what are the other key components do you think Ukraine should consider in order to make sure that, as you said earlier, that the funding available is not prone to political considerations? Perhaps that element about the confiscation, something that you could reflect on.
Yes, I mean, this sustainable funding for Ukraine has been our top priority, as I've said already, confiscation of Russian assets. And here we speak about $300 billion of the Russian sovereign bank assets that were frozen in the first days of the full-scale war in the G7 countries. Most of them are in Belgium, in the security depository called Euroclear, but not only there. There are funds frozen in France, in Canada, UK, in the US, also in Australia and Switzerland. And at this point, foreign partners have made the decision to use the windfall profits that are generated by those frozen funds in the Belgian Euroclear for Ukraine. So starting from 2024, Ukraine received already 1.5 billion euros from the European Union in 2024, and another tranche of the similar amount, likely 1.5 billion euros, will be received in the nearest future. And for this money, Ukraine is absolutely free to procure weapons. And some of them were procured from the Ukrainian manufacturers with the help of Denmark. Some were procured from France, specifically Caesar howitzers. And since 2025, this windfall profits on the Russian assets in Belgium will be used to cover the 50 billion loan which G7 countries issued for Ukraine in the end of 2024. But what we are right now working on is that we need to collect all those frozen funds in one institution. Let's have it in the European Union to make sure that our European partners are not afraid that pooling of a large amount of assets simultaneously from their jurisdiction might have some implications on their financial markets and the stability and attractiveness of euro. And this institution will be tasked in maximizing profits, because right now we are getting roughly 3 billion euros per year. But if the management of the assets is more effective, this money can generate up to $20 billion. So that's much more. That's one way. Another way is to impose the so-called restrictive tariffs on, let's say, Russian LNG. Right now, European Union is importing Russian LNG gas, and they are increasing the volumes of the supplies instead of decreasing them, as they have planned intentionally. And why there is no tariff imposed? If the tariff is imposed, that could generate money in order to support Ukraine in the long term. Something like the Keith Kellogg, Trump's special envoy for Ukraine, offered as the source for the funding of the reconstruction and recovery of Ukraine.
The organization that you lead now is called International Center for Ukrainian Victory. What does the victory for Ukraine mean for you? What does it entail, both in terms of its territorial scope, and do you believe that for the sake of forcing Russia to withdraw from eastern Ukraine, Kiev should consider the possibility of advancing further into the Kursk region as a mode of action?
Well, of course, we understand that there can be no victory without the full restoration of the control of the Ukrainian government over entire territory of Ukraine, so restoring entire sovereignty. We have to understand that this war creates a very dangerous precedent, because it shows that if the nuclear power blackmailed the world with the potential use of nuclear weapons, they may get the carte blanche in invading and occupying a sovereign democratic state. This basically sends a very dangerous signal to the entire world. And that's why for us, part of the victory, of course, without beyond the restoration of the full sovereignty, is also justice. It's also accountability. It's also bringing Russians to the Russian war crimes to justice, but it is also about providing Ukraine with efficient security guarantees to make sure that Russia will never ever dare to attack us again.
Indeed. And also in terms of the recovery of Ukraine's territorial integrity, how hopeful are you that those 1991 borders will be restored anytime soon?
Well, the chances for restoring fully the borders back in 2022, when Ukraine showed miracles on the battlefield, liberating Kherson, liberating Kharkiv regions, were of course larger than today. Unfortunately, we are seeing that the situation on the battlefield is rather complicated, but of course we do not give up. And it's very important to continue reminding and repeating on the international arena that there can be no real lasting peace, there can be no real justice without Ukraine winning this war and Russia being defeated.
And also my last question to you. We heard some reports very recently that a certain Armen Sarkisian, believed to be a pro-Russian Ukrainian paramilitary leader, was killed in a bomb blast inside a residential building in Moscow. And there have been some reports circulating in the Western media that there are Ukrainian forces are believed to be behind a series of assassinations in Russia. Do you think, I mean, what do you make of those reports? I'm not entirely sure to what extent they're confirmed, unconfirmed. Do you think this is also should be viewed as a mode of legal action aimed at ensuring that Ukraine is able to restore its control over the full scope of its territorial scope?
Well, I cannot comment on the specific cases because, as you've said, they are absolutely unconfirmed, and I do not possess any additional information on that. But I think that the message of the justice globally should be conveyed and repeated to Russians, and they must understand that they will be brought to account for the war crimes they committed.
See. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Halushka. I'm so grateful to you for your time. This was Olena Halushka, head of the board at the International Center for Ukrainian Victory, who joined us from Kiev, Ukraine. See you very soon.